We begin our tutorial for clash detection using the Building Design Suite, and we're going to work in Autodesk Navisworks Manage 2014. We start with an aggregated model. In this case, we have our steel and our duct systems for level 5 of a project, and we're going to use the Clash Detective tool to clash these items together. We open the Clash Detective tool and pin it to our desktop so that it'll stay open and we can see both our model and our Clash Detective at the same time. Here we have a dashboard of tests that have been created. There aren't any in our system, so we're going to go ahead and add a test and name it appropriately. In this case, steel versus ducts. This is an important part of the user interface because we can see the status of all of our tests at once in one location. Now we simply use the selection tools to compare two different model elements together. We can do that via the selection tree. We can also use search sets and selection sets. Here we're going to just expand on each file type and pick the objects we want to compare for clash detection. We'll use the 6th floor framing file and pick our structural columns and structural framing. And we'll use the HVAC file and pick all of our duct elements. We have options on how these objects are compared or clashed. We can clash the lines, the surfaces, the different points that are in these files, as well as do a self-intersect. We can also say whether or not we want to do a hard clash or run through a clearance or duplication clash. We can set a tolerance. In this case, we'll stick with the 0.04 inches. We can also link this to an animation or to a timeliner sequence so that we can do 5D clash detection as well. For now, we'll stick without a link and we'll go ahead and hit the big Run Test button and the results will be returned to us. We could see we found 122 clashes, and right now those are all in the status of new. So we can go ahead and roll this part of the dashboard up, and we'll come back to this later to see where our active, reviewed, approved, and resolved elements of the clash are at. We have a list of all the clashes, and we can simply walk down them. You can see the first one is selected by default, and it's giving us a viewpoint of that clash. We can toggle the color on and off, highlighting the item 1 and item 2. The toggle here works between either the red and green colors, which we do have control over. We can set that color, or the object colors native in the file format. We can work down the display settings list. We can choose how to isolate these objects, whether or not we dim the rest of the model or not, or hide the rest of the model. And we can also choose how we work between each clash. Do we want to go ahead and use the ability to transition or animate those transitions? And also, how are the viewpoints created for us? Are they automatically updated, or do we have to implicitly save each viewpoint? Here we can see a clash very clearly run for us, but if we go ahead and focus on that, that'll clear out any obstructions in that view. So very important for setting that viewpoint, and we want to see just the objects. As we work down the list, I'm going to animate those transitions, so I've toggled that on. And as we work down the list, we're going to be doing a zoom out and zoom in to each element. This really helps us with the context, particularly in larger projects. Once we get to a clash that we want to focus in this case, this main duct that probably has multiple pieces of steel clashing with it, we're going to go ahead and right-click on that item down here in the view, and we can go ahead and group the involved clashes. This is a quick way to get us all the clashes for a particular object grouped together in the list for us. We'll go ahead and make that group, and we can name this group whatever it may be. In this case, we'll choose rectangular duct. Now that we have the group saved, it also saves that viewpoint for us, which is great to reference back to later on in the process. We can add comments, and this now gets us into the idea of how do we manage these individual clashes or these grouped clashes. We're going to go ahead and say, here's some action we want to take on that, and then we'll go ahead and assign that to a group member. So I have an MEP coordinator who's going to be working with me. I'll assign that to that person, and then again, add a note in there. Let's go ahead and fix this one first. This seems to be our largest clash on this level. So we've identified the clash. We're managing that clash. We can see what level it's on, what grid intersection it's on, and then we can continue to work down the list. So I would keep going. I would do that same grouping again. But what I'm going to do is come back to that one clash. Now it's time to start to resolve these clashes. and I'm going to use the switchback functionality built into Navisworks, which again is an important part of the workflows using building design suites. We'll use the switchback functionality here by choosing the switchback for the correct object, in this case the duct. And in the background, Autodesk Revit is being opened up for us, and it's loading that model file. So we'll switch over to Revit here. We'll see that model file loading in for us, and we'll go to the appropriate view to fix the problem. A great feature about the switchback is it automatically highlights and gives us a view of the model element in question. So all I have to do is either dig into that view that's opened up, or I can switch to another view that has everything isolated. In this case, one of just level 5 HVAC. Sure enough, there's the duct in question, and I'll make a modification to it. For demonstration purposes, we'll make a really easy modification. We'll drop this to one of the predefined offsets, in this case 11 feet. And now I know I've got the clearance to make this resolution happen. I can save the file, and if that file is referenced in as an RVT file into Navisworks, it'll automatically load. In this case, we're using NWC files, so we'll go ahead and export this file back out to the NWC file, come back over into our Navisworks environment, and rerun the clash detection to make sure that we've resolved the issue. When I do this file export, I do want to make sure I'm overwriting the original file. This is the power of using Navisworks, and that we're appending and aggregating these files together. So I can use this overwrite capability to load in and refresh the changes without having to change my model. Very powerful part of the workflow when working with Building Design Suite, and that we have all these tools right at our fingertips and the ability to work through this process very quickly and easily. There we have it. Our export is done. We'll switch back over to Navisworks. We will do the refresh. Our model will reset and our view will reset. We can quickly get back to where we were by selecting on that clash group again. And now you'll see that we can do a visual check. We can just zoom in, and sure enough, this was a pretty obvious change. So we are in clearance, but we want to do the analytical check as well. So we'll rerun the test, and that test will come back and show us what has been resolved. And there is our result. We show that the status has been resolved, and of course we can look at it and see that it surely is now been fixed. We also have a color change that happens there, so all the individual objects have a new color of yellow, and if we go back to that dashboard, we can see that we have one less clash than we had before, and one is now in resolved. So we have 117 active and one resolved. So a great way to not only just find these clashes, but we're going to manage, assign, and resolve those clashes using the Building Design Suite.